This is the word of God for the people of God. So those of you who are embarrassed because you don't know where everything is in the Bible, I hope that was a comforting experience for you. I love this old joke. It's about Harry Emerson Fosdick, who in the first half of the last century was a very famous preacher in a very famous church, the Riverside Church in New York City. And he was one day, as happens, asked how long it took him to prepare a sermon. And I loved his answer so much, I've been using it all my life. He said, it requires 20 hours a week to prepare a 20-minute sermon. It's not far wrong. It takes 20 minutes to prepare a 2-hour sermon. And if there's no time limit, I'm ready now. I love that. And I don't give Fosdick credit, I just say it if I feel like it, because one of my seminary professors says, a real genius steals without shame, and that is my watchword. Occasionally people will say, oh, you should publish some of your sermons. These are people who don't listen to my sermons, but, And I say, there would be this much sermon and this much research trying to remember who said what I'm quoting. Humor and gratitude, joy, and the Spirit are kind of what was on my mind. Maybe it's because it's Mother's Day and I know what's going to happen this afternoon. My children seem to think that the best way to celebrate Mother's Day is to recount all of their stories of the stupid things I've done as a mom, or the things that they think are funny. If you see my daughter later today when we come for the pictures, you can ask her about the lentil burritos. In fact, I've found over the years that the best funerals and memorials even have, in addition to sorrow, they have a lot of joy and a lot of laughter. And if you're really lucky, you'll get the UCLA marching band at your funeral. Laughter is a really important part of our faith. It's an important part of how we build our spiritual life to live generously. The choir is an incessant source of hilarity. It's mostly due to the guys in the back row, but the guy in front sometimes is where we get our funnies. When Stephen York hears something he really likes in rehearsal, he puts his finger on his forehead and he said, "That was good, press save." Which always reminds me of a season in my life that was extremely joyful, which was a time when I was in my 20s and 30s and early 40s, and I did senior high camp, for a church senior high camp. And I remember distinctly one of those years. It was the 70s, and we sang, and the camp staff, I was part of the camp staff, was an unusually talented, musically kind of staff. Not me, but some other people. And I will never forget standing around the campfire. Things had wound down for the night. There were a few people still talking, and there was a group of about a dozen or so of us just standing around the campfire, and somebody started a song. I don't remember the song, but pretty soon we were looking at the stars, singing in a cappella 37-part harmony. And I remember thinking to myself, don't forget this, remember this, there's something special about this. And I remember it several times a year. Laughter, joy, gratitude, generosity, it's all part of what brings us alive in the Spirit. And today we're going to talk about laughter in the Bible. I'm glad you're here. I hope that chatting about laughter in the Bible feeds you, that it encourages you to continue to be generous with your humor, your gratitude, and your love of others. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to weep and a time to laugh. In the Sermon on the Plain in Luke, Jesus says, "Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled." And I don't think he means it literally, because the very next verse he says, "Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh." The emptiness that happens in loss, in fear and anxiety, the things that come to us as humans, we are filled And often laughter is what fills the empty place in our spirit. Laughter is obviously a sign of happiness, of contentment and ease. Laughter reflects the light of God's Spirit in us. The joy we find in laughter can uplift us, and it encourages us to share this beautiful gift with others. Laughter is essential to living generously. Laughter is essential to living generously. He will yet fill your mouth with laughter and your lips with shouts of joy. That comes from Job, which is a really long book of the Bible and has very little joy or happiness or laughter in it. But throughout, there's the promise that God will fill our mouth and our heart and our soul and our spirit with laughter and joy and contentment. And when we remember that laughter is a gift from God, it reminds us not only of how it feeds our spirit, but that there is a divine purpose in laughter. Laughter can bring people together. It can break down barriers. It can foster friendships, even among people who otherwise might not be friends. In the book of Joy, Douglas Adams recounts some of his times that he has spent with the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And he writes this: "One of the most stunning aspects of the week that we spent together was how much of it was spent laughing. At times, the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop seemed to be as much a comedy duo as two venerable spiritual teachers. It was their ability to laugh and joke and poke fun at the ordinary pieties that so righteously violated our expectations. When a Dalai Lama and an Archbishop walk into a bar, you don't expect them to be the ones cracking the jokes." And in the book, there's a list of what the Archbishop and the Dalai Lama, with the help of writer Douglas Adams, call the 8 pillars of joy. The 8 pillars of joy. And as I read those, I thought, hey, we do pretty well around here. Perspective was the first one, perspective. There are a lot of different angles, and I think our church does a remarkable job. In fact, I know that we do a remarkable job at, we span generations. We span political perspectives, we span income levels, we span professions. We gather together with people we might not otherwise gather with. Humility, I love the title of this chapter in this book. I tried to look humble and modest. I had a friend who used to say humility and how I achieved it. Acceptance, which is the only place change can begin, and we talk often about being change makers. Forgiveness, which frees us from our past. Gratitude, remembering that we are fortunate in so many ways, particularly to be alive. We talk about gratitude a lot around here. Compassion, we say often we seek to be change makers in the way of Jesus, the compassionate change maker. And generosity, of course, that is our watchword. And the chapter I think we maybe are neglecting, humor. Humor. And the subtitle in the book is "Joking is Much Better." Sometimes our earnestness about our religion causes us to forget the joy of the Spirit. Sometimes our eagerness to be right with God causes us to lose our sense of humor about our foibles and the foibles of the people around us. Desmond Tutu says, where is that? I'll just take it from here. "It's not a laughing matter," he says, "to not know where your next meal is going to come from. It's not a laughing matter when you get up in the morning and you don't have a job. But humor has its value. I have been helped by my wife, Leah, who is very good at keeping me humble. Once we were driving and I noticed she was a little smugger than she normally is. And then I looked at the car in front of us and I saw a bumper sticker that said, "Any woman who wants to be equal to a man lacks ambition." That's a t-shirt for trouble, isn't it? I like it. I like it. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because life does throw us challenges, but laughter can be such a refuge in difficult times. If you want to hear laughter, I am telling you, go to an AA meeting. Those people laugh incessantly at their own foibles, at each other. They can be wicked funny, but they have a joy of people who know what it's like to be plucked back from the abyss. Laughing in the face of adversity doesn't mean ignoring our troubles. It's an acknowledgement that God's strength and grace and mercy can and will carry us through. There's a story about Archbishop Tutu, who had been visiting Rwanda, and if you're old enough, you will remember the genocide that happened between the Tutus and the Hutsis. And he was speaking to them, and how do you speak about a wound that was that deep and at the time was very fresh? And his solution was, as it often was, to use humor. So he began to tell a story about the big-nosed people and the small-nosed people. And apparently in his story, the big-nosed people are better. I like that. And the people in the audience were laughing and laughing and laughing until they kind of collectively gasped and realized that he was mocking them gently, graciously, mercifully, giving them a little poke about their prejudices. And they understood that he knew that that was true in his country and in their country, and it served no one, least of all the cause of God's love for humanity. Laughter has healing power, doesn't it? I mean, I think there's a little bit of scientific evidence for that, but laughter has not actually been studied that much. But by embracing laughter, we let God's joy come into our heart, and it transforms our outlook on life. And I don't know what the connection is between our physical health and our mental health and our spiritual health, but I feel like they're all part of the same package. And they influence each other. And by embracing humor and laughter and joy, we find ourselves healed in so many ways. Psalm 126 says, "Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy." Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions, they fail not. They are new every morning. That's where that song comes from. Great is thy faithfulness. Friendship flourishes when laughter is present. It creates connections that bind people together, allowing each person to share in the joy and lightness that laughter brings. The Bible encourages connection and camaraderie. Laughter is a vital aspect of our fellowship with each other. And if we value the gift of friendship, we are going to value the gift of laughter. We can create laughter in a way that helps us acknowledge our blessings and our foibles and God's grace among us. Hine matov umanaim, shevet amhimgam yachad. Apart from a couple of prayers, that's it for my Hebrew. 3 semesters of Hebrew in graduate school, and that's what I've got. How good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. It's a song. In fact, it's a song that goes to a dance. Therefore, Paul writes in Thessalonians, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. I love that part of this because that's what I want to say to you. Encourage each other, keep encouraging each other, keep building each other up, as in fact we do. This is really important. Laughter can build bonds, but the wrong kind of humor can break them. Demeaning humor is counterproductive. And since we've all been to junior high school or middle school, we know this from our own experience, because nobody is better at demeaning humor than a middle school person. Mocking other people's convictions or their situation, no matter how witty, doesn't achieve the miracle that laughter is meant to achieve. Now, I do make an exception for a kind of gentle self-deprecation, being able to laugh at and invite others to laugh at ourselves, our mistakes, our personal foibles, and even some of our bigger life mistakes. Using humor and wit can draw us together. It can unite us, and it can be a source of healing. When I am no longer ashamed of my mistakes, large and small, I have conquered pride. Think about that. When we are so ashamed of our mistakes we can't admit them, part of what we're saying is, I am so prideful, I think I should never make mistakes. How's that working for you? Never making mistakes or never admitting them. When we're so ashamed of our mistakes that we can't laugh at them, much less apologize, we demonstrate a kind of pride. And we miss some really funny stuff that way. Laughter can bring so much healing and grace. Not self-harm, not self-denigration, not harming others, not harming others. This is not running yourself down in the hopes that someone will contradict you. I like to call it having a compassionate chuckle at my own expense. I invite you to try it. Pick your friends carefully when you experiment with this. It's hard to explain, but you know wholesome humor when you hear it. And you know that is not the same as artificial laughter, the laughter of discomfort, or acerbic wit meant to hurt. Blessed are you who hunger now, for you will be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Let us consider, says the letter to Hebrews, how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together. There it is. Churches are supposed to have meetings. We have church meetings. Now, I know some of you would rather poke yourself in the eye with a pin than go to a church meeting. But around here, church meetings are where some of the funniest stuff happens. Through laughter, we find strength to achieve amazing things, to take on new challenges as a church. As individuals, we find strength in our trials, and we create lasting memories with friends and family. Here's a little something to make you smarter than your friends today. Humor, the word humor, like the word humility, comes from the word humus, H-U-M-U-S, dirt. It's Latin for dirt. You know, dirt, like in Genesis where God makes humans out of dirt. That's what we're made of, the sustaining earth, dirt. And we come alive when God's Spirit is blown into us. Sometimes I tell people that I can't tell jokes. I'm not a good joke teller, and this is true. But I can be funny, mostly because I think so many things are funny, and because I like to laugh, and I like to hear you laugh, and I like us to laugh together. And so I am willing to try a joke, even if the only laughter I get is the pity laughter of, oh, look, Pastor tried to make a funny. Or laughter of a sideways joke that you miss if you're not paying attention. I just like us to laugh. It's like music. I love to listen to music. It's great to listen to music. It's great to listen to laughter. But it's even better if you can make the laughter and the music for yourself. And it's best of all when we laugh and make music together. Choirs are the best kind of music. Fight me. Here's a last word from Archbishop Tutu. If you start looking for the humor in life, you'll find it. You'll stop asking, why me? And start recognizing that life happens to all of us. It makes everything easier, including our ability to accept others and to accept all that life will bring. May it be so for us today, that we are raised up by joy, by mercy, by grace, by love, by laughter, and by music.